get started with Firebase, you need to have a Google account. So please create an account first before proceeding to the next step. But if you already have an account, then you may visit firebase.google.com. Then click on this Get Started button. You may need to log into your Google account if you haven't already, otherwise you will be redirected to your console. Once on the Firebase console, our first step is to create a project. To do so, click on this button. Let us provide a name for our project. And then hit continue. We can enable Google Analytics for our project for free, or you can turn it off if you don't want it enabled. If you enable it, you will need to set a Google Analytics account on step 3. You may choose a default account for Firebase, or create a different account. After that, you can finish the project creation. Wait for the provisioning to finish, then press continue to be redirected to the project overview. From here, we will be connecting our web app to our newly created project. To do so, we need to click on this button. Notice also that there's option for iOS and for Android, and even Unity. So let's click on this web. To connect our web app, we need to provide a nickname for it since it's possible to connect multiple apps to our project. After that, we can now have this code block that we needed to add to our project to use Firebase SDK. That having said, we need to set up now our project codes. Before we start coding, we need to install Node.js, a JavaScript runtime. We need Node.js to be able to work with Firebase Web Development SDK. To install Node.js, go to nodejs.org. Then, click on this button that has LTS, which means long-term support. This will download the installer for Node.js. Once you've downloaded the installer, you may go ahead and run it to install Node.js. I will not be running mine since I already have Node installed. To validate your Node.js installation, open a terminal or CMD for Windows and type node-v. If it returns a version number, then you have installed Node.js correctly. Now let's go back to project setup. It is essential to always start a project on an empty folder and make sure your folder's name doesn't have spaces in between to avoid conflict with Node. The next step will be to open your project with VS Code or your preferred IDE. And in VS Code, you may press Ctrl plus backtick or the key above the Tab key to open an integrated terminal so that you don't have to open a separate window of terminal. Everything you need is on one window. Let us now initialize our project. To do so, we need to use npm or Node Package Manager, which comes with your Node.js installation. Type npm init.y on your terminal to initialize the project, and you might notice that it created a package.json file. And if we open it, we can see the details about the project. You may change the name or description accordingly if you want, otherwise we can leave it as is. The next thing we need to do is install the Firebase SDK. To do so, type npm i firebase and wait for the installation to finish. The setup we will be doing is a modular setup with module bundler, specifically Webpack. Now, I know that this setup is not beginner friendly, but this is the proper way of setting up our project, and it greatly improves the performance of the app. Additionally, we only have to do this once every time we create a project, and the steps are always the same, so you really just need to do as I do in this step. With that said, let us now install Webpack by typing npm i webpack space webpack webpack-cli-d and wait for the installation to finish. Then, let's also create a folder named src, and inside it, let's add index.js. This will be the starting point of our app. Let us also add a new file called webpack.config.js and paste in this code. And after that, let's open package.json and add a build script after the test. We will be using this build script every time we open our app. Let's go back to index.js and finally link our app to our Firebase project. This is where we will paste the code that we got from registering a web app in a Firebase console. So here, let's just copy this one and paste it here. And that's how you link your app to your Firebase project. And after that, let's use our build script by typing npm run build, and it will create a dist folder with bundle.js in it. For us to be able to open that in a browser, we need to create an HTML file. So let's create an index.html inside the dist folder. Let's go back to index.js and let's just add a console.log so we know that it works. And this is a cool trick in VS Code. Type exclamation mark and wait for the pop-up to appear and press enter, and you've got an HTML file boilerplate. We can change the title of our document to our project title. And we can link our bundle.js to this HTML file. And after that, we hit save. And we can run the build again. For us to be able to open our index.html file, right-click on the index.html, copy path, and go to your browser and paste it in a new tab. Now, to open the DevTools, press Ctrl-Shift-C, and then head to the console tab and you will see this. Going back to our code, if we open our index.js file, we can see here a console log. So basically, we use console log to log our app. That's why we can see it in the console tab in our DevTools. Finally, we can save our work using Git and then essentially upload it to GitHub for safekeeping. First, we need to run git init, and then we create a file .gitignore and add node modules folder inside since we don't want it to be saved. After that, we can then track our changes by running git add period. And then we can commit our changes by typing git commit -m, and let's add our message as initial commit. So you can obviously change the message if you want. And optionally, we can head over to github.com for us to be able to upload our codes there. But we need an account to be able to do so. Creating an account is very straightforward, so I will not be teaching that. Instead, let's create a new repository. Name it whatever you want. So for me, I'll use Firebase starter. And then I'm going to put it to public so that you can access it later. And we can create a repository. Let's now go back to VS Code and add this link as our remote repository. To add the link as our remote repository, we use git remote add and then the name of the remote repository. So for me, I'll use origin. And then I'm going to paste the link. After that, we can now push our changes to the remote repository. To do so, we use git push -u and then the name of the remote repository, which is origin. and then the branch. Let's wait for it to finish and then go back to our GitHub, and we refresh the page, and as you can see, the code is now saved.